Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Haven's Central Tower, watching the morning sun rise over endless fields of golden wheat. The colony had grown beyond his wildest dreams over the past 30 years. What started as a small settlement of 5,000 brave souls had become a thriving community of 50,000 people. Children played in the streets. Farmers worked the rich soil, and families built lives far from the crowded cities of Earth. Dr. Lisa Barnes rushed into the observation deck, her face pale and worried. She carried a datapad that showed readings from the deep space sensors. Jake had never seen her look so frightened in all the years they had worked together. "Governor, we have a problem," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "The sensors are picking up something big coming our way. Really big." Jake took the datapad and studied the readings. The numbers didn't make sense at first. Then the reality hit him like a cold wave. 20 massive ships were approaching their system at high speed. The vessels were unlike anything in the human databases. They were clearly alien in design, with smooth curved hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "How long do we have?" Jake asked, his mind already racing through their limited options. 6 hours, maybe 7 at most," Lisa replied. "Jake, these ships are enormous. Each one is bigger than anything we've ever built, and they're armed with weapons I can't even identify." Commander Alex Carter arrived at that moment, having received the emergency alert. His face was grim as he looked at the sensor data. New Haven's defense force consisted of exactly 12 patrol craft and 1 aging frigate. They were designed to handle pirates and smugglers, not an alien war fleet. "We need to send a message to Earth immediately," Alex said. "And we should try to contact these aliens. Maybe they're just passing through our system." Jake nodded and activated the colony's main communication array. The message to Earth would take 6 months to reach home, but they had to try. He recorded everything they knew about the approaching fleet and sent it toward Earth with maximum priority. Next, they tried to contact the alien ships. Jake personally sent the message, speaking slowly and clearly into the communication device. "This is Governor Jake Morrison of the human colony New Haven. We welcome you to our system. We seek peaceful contact and friendship with all intelligent species. Please respond if you can understand this message." They waited for an hour. No response came. Lisa tried different radio frequencies. Alex attempted to send mathematical sequences that might be understood by any advanced civilization. Still nothing. The alien fleet continued its steady approach, ignoring all attempts at communication. "Maybe they don't have compatible communication systems," Lisa suggested hopefully. "They might not be able to hear us." Alex shook his head as he studied the tactical displays. "They're hearing us. Look at their formation. They're arranging themselves in attack patterns. These aren't exploration ships, Governor. These are warships." The colony's emergency council met in the main hall. 50 elected representatives from every district of New Haven gathered to decide their fate. The debate was short and desperate. Some wanted to evacuate, but there weren't enough ships to carry even a tenth of the population. Others suggested hiding in the underground shelters, hoping the aliens would leave them alone. Dr. Helen Wright, the colony's chief historian, stood up to speak. "We need to consider the possibility that these aliens have hostile intentions, but we also need to remember that we represent humanity out here. Whatever we do will be humanity's first impression on this species." Jake made a decision that would haunt his final hours. "We surrender. We make it clear that we pose no threat and offer to cooperate with whatever they want. Maybe they just want our planet. We can relocate if necessary." The alien fleet arrived exactly when Lisa's calculations predicted. The ships took positions around New Haven's planet, completely surrounding it. Up close, the vessels were even more terrifying. Each one was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays. Jake sent another message, this time including video of himself and the other colony leaders. "We are peaceful humans living on this world. We surrender to you completely. We will cooperate with any demands you make. Please respond so we can discuss terms." The response came 30 minutes later, but not in the form anyone expected. The first orbital bombardment struck the northern farming district. Brilliant beams of energy lanced down from the alien ships, vaporizing everything they touched. Buildings, vehicles, people. Everything simply disappeared in flashes of superheated plasma. "They're not taking prisoners," Alex said grimly as he watched the destruction from the command center. "They're not even trying to preserve the infrastructure. They're just killing everything." The bombardment was methodical and thorough. The aliens targeted every settlement, every farm, every road. They worked in a systematic pattern, ensuring that nothing would survive. It wasn't the chaotic destruction of battle. It was the clinical efficiency of extermination. Jake tried to send one final message to the aliens, begging them to stop, offering anything humanity could give in exchange for mercy. The message was ignored. The bombardment continued without pause. Dr. Barnes managed to reach the underground research facility as the main colony was being destroyed. She activated the emergency recording equipment and documented everything she could see. Her hands shook as she spoke into the recorder. "This is Dr. Lisa Barnes. The time is 1400 hours, colony standard time. The alien fleet is systematically destroying every trace of human presence on New Haven. They ignored all our attempts at communication and surrender. They seem to view this as some kind of cleaning operation, not war. They're not even landing troops. They're just erasing us." Above ground, the alien bombardment entered its final phase. The energy beams swept across the landscape like giant brushes, painting everything with death. The wheat fields that Jake had watched grow for 30 years burned in massive firestorms. The schools where children had learned to read became craters of melted stone. Jake Morrison died at his post in the central tower, still trying to broadcast surrender signals that no one was listening to. Commander Carter died with his men, attempting a hopeless last stand with weapons that couldn't even scratch the alien ships. The families, the farmers, the teachers, the children, all of them died under the merciless bombardment from above. In the underground facility, Dr. Barnes felt the ground shaking as the energy beams finally found her hiding place. She spoke her last words into the recorder. "If anyone ever finds this, know that we tried to make peace. We offered everything we had. They killed us anyway. Make sure Earth knows what happened here." The bombardment stopped after 8 hours. Where New Haven had once stood, only scorched earth remained. The alien fleet lingered for 2 more days, their sensors scanning the planet to ensure that every trace of human life had been eliminated. Then they departed, leaving behind a dead world and the emergency beacon that would carry news of the massacre to Earth. The Kethvar Dominion considered the operation a complete success. Another pest species had been removed from a useful planet. They would return later to begin colonization. It never occurred to them that they had just made the worst mistake in their species' history. Lieutenant Commander Sam Rodriguez was finishing his night shift at Deep Space Monitoring Station Gamma 7 when the emergency beacon arrived. The small device, badly damaged from its long journey through space, transmitted its message in desperate bursts of static-filled data. Sam had been monitoring deep space communications for 8 years, but he had never received anything like this. The first part of the message was clear enough: New Haven's identification codes and Governor Morrison's authorization. Then came the recordings. Sam watched in growing horror as the alien fleet appeared on the colony's sensors, ignored all attempts at communication, and began systematic extermination of 50,000 innocent people. Dr. Barnes's final recording made Sam's hands shake. Her voice, calm and professional even as death closed in around her, described the aliens' complete disregard for human life. They had treated the massacre like routine pest control, efficient and emotionless. Sam immediately contacted Admiral Kate Sullivan at Stellar Defense Command on Earth. The Admiral was known throughout the fleet as a tough, practical leader who had spent her entire career preparing humanity for the dangers of deep space. When she saw the recordings from New Haven, her face went completely blank. "How reliable is this data?" Admiral Sullivan asked, though she already knew the answer. "Completely reliable, ma'am," Sam replied. "The beacon's authentication codes check out. The recordings are genuine. New Haven is gone." Admiral Sullivan stared at the tactical display, showing the alien fleet's systematic destruction. She had always known this day might come, The day when humanity would encounter species that viewed them as nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. She had spent years preparing for this possibility, developing contingency plans that most people hoped would never be needed. "Contact the Terran Council immediately," she ordered. "Emergency session, highest priority. And Sam, this information is classified at the highest level until further notice." The emergency session convened 6 hours later in the secure chambers beneath Geneva. President Danny Brooks arrived looking tired and confused. He had been woken from sleep with news that seemed impossible to believe. 50,000 humans, dead in a matter of hours, killed by aliens who refused even basic communication. "Are we certain this isn't some kind of mistake?" President Brooks asked as he reviewed the recordings. "Maybe they didn't understand our surrender signals." Captain Ben Hughes, a veteran of humanity's few previous conflicts, shook his head grimly. "Sir, with respect, you don't systematically destroy every building, every farm, and every person by accident. This was deliberate genocide." Intelligence Officer Maria Santos had spent the past few hours analyzing everything they knew about the attackers. Her report painted a terrifying picture of humanity's new enemies. The ships matched descriptions from other species' historical records. This appears to be the Kethvar Dominion. They're a militaristic empire that has been expanding across this region of space for over a century. What's their history with other species? Admiral Sullivan asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Maria's voice was steady but grim. They had contact with 43 other intelligent species over the past 100 years. All 43 species are now extinct. The Kethvar call it territorial optimization. They identify planets they want, then eliminate whatever species currently lives there. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't dealing with a hostile neighbor or even traditional conquerors. They were facing a species that committed genocide as routine policy. "What about diplomatic options?" asked Councilmember Patricia Lewis. "Can we contact the Galactic Trade Federation? File a formal complaint?" Captain Hughes laughed bitterly. "Ma'am, the Kethvar just murdered 50,000 civilians without even trying to communicate. What makes you think they care about galactic law?" President Brooks looked around the room desperately, searching for alternatives to what everyone knew was coming. Surely there must be some way to resolve this peacefully. We could offer to relocate our colonies, pay tribute, anything to avoid war with a species that has that kind of military power. Admiral Sullivan stood up slowly. Her voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. "Mr. President, I'm invoking Protocol 7. The room went silent. Most of the council members had never even heard of Protocol 7. It was one of the military's most classified contingency plans, known only to a handful of senior officers and intelligence personnel. "Admiral," President Brooks said carefully, "I'm not familiar with that protocol." Protocol 7 authorizes unlimited military response to attempted genocide against human populations, Sullivan explained. "It was developed after first contact, when our strategists realized we might encounter species with values completely incompatible with human survival. The protocol gives military command complete authority to eliminate threats to human existence by any means necessary." Maria Santos activated a secure terminal and displayed the classified files. "Sir, Protocol 7 includes assets that most government officials don't know exist. Hidden fleets, advanced weapons, sleeper agents throughout known space. The military has been preparing for this scenario for 20 years. President Brooks read to the protocol documents with growing amazement and horror. Humanity had been secretly building an advanced military force designed for exactly this situation. Ships that violated galactic treaties, weapons that other species didn't know humans possessed, and a network of covert operatives that spanned dozens of star systems. The Kethvar think they destroyed a helpless farming colony," Admiral Sullivan continued. "They have no idea what they just awakened. They view genocide as a practical solution to territorial disputes. They're about to learn that some species don't see it that way." Captain Hughes pulled up tactical displays, showing human military assets throughout space. "We have Black Fleet elements in 12 systems, advanced stealth ships in 30 more. The Kethvar think humans are weak because our public fleets use older, less threatening technology. They've never seen what we built in secret. The vote was unanimous. President Brooks signed the Protocol 7 authorization with a shaking hand, fully understanding that he was unleashing forces that would reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Admiral Sullivan immediately began issuing orders through secure channels. Across human space, sleeper agents activated their hidden equipment. Black Fleet commanders received coded messages authorizing them to begin operations. Advanced weapon systems that had never been tested in combat were brought online. How long will this take? President Brooks asked. The Kethvar think they have months or years before humans could possibly respond, Admiral Sullivan replied. They're wrong. Our assets are already moving into position. They'll discover what humans are really capable of when someone murders our families. Dr. Wright, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. Admiral, what happens after we defeat them? The galaxy has never seen humans use this kind of military force. Other species might see us as a threat. Admiral Sullivan's smile was cold and entirely without humor. Doctor, after what the Kethvar did to New Haven, I'm much more concerned with making sure every species in the galaxy understands what happens when you commit genocide against humans. Fear might be exactly what we need. The meeting ended with Earth's leadership committed to a course of action that would either establish humanity as a major galactic power or result in their complete destruction. Admiral Sullivan didn't believe there would be any middle ground. As the council members filed out, President Brooks approached the Admiral privately. Kate, are you certain we can win this? Admiral Sullivan looked at the recordings from New Haven one more time, watching innocent families die under alien bombardment. Mr. President, the Kethvar have been committing genocide for a century because they've never faced consequences. They think it makes them strong. They're about to discover it made us unforgiving. Captain Ryan Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Phantom, humanity's most advanced stealth ship, watching the alien fleet through sensors that the Kethvar couldn't even detect. The same ships that had murdered New Haven were now celebrating at a refueling station in neutral space, their crews apparently enjoying shore leave after what they considered a successful mission. Can you believe this? Muttered Lieutenant Kelly Mason, the ship's tactical officer. They're actually celebrating. Ryan had been hunting this particular Kethvar fleet for 2 weeks, using advanced tracking technology to follow their energy signatures across 3 star systems. The aliens had made no effort to hide their movements. Why would they? In their experience, no species had ever been capable of tracking them, much less threatening them. Distance to the station? Ryan asked quietly. 12,000 kilometers and closing, reported navigator Paul Chen. The station appears to be a major supply hub. I'm reading massive antimatter storage facilities and weapon stockpiles. The refueling station was enormous, built into a large asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a military base. Dozens of Kethvar ships were docked there, not just the fleet that had destroyed New Haven, but many others as well. Intelligence estimates suggested that over 100,000 Kethvar military personnel were currently stationed at the facility. Dr. Amy Wright's voice came over the secure communication channel from Earth. As humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, she had been studying captured Kethvar data for weeks, trying to understand how their minds worked. Captain, remember that the Kethvar have never experienced defeat. They literally don't have concept for retreat or strategic withdrawal. This makes them predictable, but also dangerous if cornered. Understood, Doctor, Ryan replied. What's our primary objective here? Admiral Sullivan's voice cut in on the channel. Complete elimination of the fleet responsible for New Haven. Secondary objective is to send a message that the Kethvar will understand, even if they don't know where it came from yet. Ryan studied the tactical display, showing the station's defenses. The Kethvar had built their facility assuming that no enemy could possibly reach them in neutral space. Their security was designed to prevent unauthorized docking, not to repel a military attack. They had no idea that human stealth technology could penetrate their sensor networks completely undetected. Specialist Jones, what's the status on the antimatter storage? Ryan asked his demolitions expert. Sergeant Mike Jones has spent 3 days analyzing the station's energy systems using passive sensors. His report was thorough and devastating. Sir, they've got enough concentrated antimatter to power a small planet. The storage containers are heavily shielded but use a centralized safety system. If we can overload the magnetic containment in just one container, the chain reaction will destroy the entire facility. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The fandom would approach using maximum stealth, deploy a small team to sabotage the antimatter storage, then withdraw before the explosion. To outside observers, it would look like an industrial accident. The HFY would lose not only the fleet that destroyed New Haven, but also a major military facility and thousands of their personnel. Remember, people, Ryan addressed his crew, we're not just striking back for New Haven. We're establishing a new reality. The HFY think genocide is a safe policy because they've never faced consequences. That ends today. The Phantom drifted closer to the station, its advanced hull absorbing all electromagnetic radiation while deflecting sensor beams. Human stealth technology was decades ahead of anything the HFY had encountered. To their sensors, the space around their station was completely empty. Ryan personally led the infiltration team. Using cutting-edge environmental suits that could mimic local atmospheric conditions, they entered the station through a maintenance airlock that the HFY had left minimally guarded. The aliens' overconfidence was about to become their greatest weakness. The interior of the station was impressive, but alien. The corridors were built for the HFY's larger frames, and the lighting operated in spectrums that were painful for human eyes. But Sergeant Jones had memorized the facility's layout from intercepted construction data. They moved through the maintenance sections like ghosts, avoiding the main areas where HFY personnel might spot them. The antimatter storage area was exactly where intelligence had predicted. Massive cylindrical containers held enough concentrated energy to destroy several city-sized areas. The safety systems were sophisticated but followed predictable engineering principles. Jones began his work, carefully overriding the magnetic containment protocols in a way that would look like equipment failure. "How long do we have once you trigger this?" Ryan asked quietly. 15 minutes maximum, Jones replied as he worked. The containment will degrade slowly at first, then cascade rapidly. Once it starts, nothing can stop it. As Jones finished his sabotage, they could hear HFY voices in nearby corridors. The aliens were discussing their recent victory at New Haven, talking about the efficiency of their extermination methods, and speculating about which human colony they might target next. The casual way they discussed mass murder made Ryan's hands clench into fists. "They're planning to hit the Centauri colonies next," whispered communications specialist Lisa Park, who had been monitoring the alien conversations through her translation equipment. "They think humans are too weak to fight back." The team made their way back to the Phantom without being detected. As they departed the station, Jones activated the final sequence. Deep in the antimatter storage area, magnetic fields began fluctuating in ways that would look entirely natural to investigators. "Phantom to Black Fleet Command," Ryan reported as they reached a safe distance. "Package delivered successfully. Estimate 12 minutes to fireworks." Admiral Clark's voice came back over the secure channel. "Acknowledged, Phantom. Black Fleet elements are moving into position throughout HFY space. This is just the beginning." The explosion, when it came, was visible from 3 star systems away. The antimatter detonation turned the entire asteroid into a miniature star for several seconds, completely vaporizing the station and every ship docked there. The fleet that had destroyed New Haven simply ceased to exist, along with the facility that had supported dozens of other HFY military operations. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Mason as they watched the explosion fade. "There's nothing left at all." The HFY response was exactly what Dr. Wright had predicted. They immediately launched an investigation, but their focus was on equipment failure and safety protocols. It never occurred to them that they might be under attack. In their experience, inferior species simply didn't possess the capability for such sophisticated operations. Admiral Clark had positioned Black Fleet assets throughout HFY territory while they were focused on the apparent accident. Using classified jump gate technology, human ships began appearing in systems that the HFY considered absolutely secure. The attacks that followed were precisely targeted: military shipyards, weapon storage facilities, and command centers. Each strike was carried out with the same clinical efficiency that the HFY had used against human civilians. But unlike the massacre at New Haven, these attacks hit only military targets. Human forces made no attempt to harm Kethvar civilians or destroy non-military infrastructure. "Sir," reported Intelligence Officer Maria Santos during the next briefing, "the Kethvar are starting to realize these aren't accidents, but they still don't know who's attacking them. Their intelligence services are investigating 12 different species, but humans aren't even on their list of suspects." Admiral Sullivan studied the tactical displays, showing successful strikes across Kethvar space. In just 2 weeks, humanity had crippled their enemy's ability to launch major military operations. The aliens who had casually committed genocide were discovering what it felt like to be helpless against a superior force. "How are they responding?" Admiral Sullivan asked. "Panic," Maria replied with satisfaction. "They're pulling ships back from their expansion fleets to protect their home systems. They're demanding answers from their military leaders. Some of their colonies are requesting additional protection." The psychological impact was exactly what human planners had hoped for. For the first time in their history, the Kethvar were experiencing fear. They had spent a century believing that their military superiority made them untouchable. Now they were learning that there was always someone more dangerous in Galaxy. Captain Foster received new orders as the Fandom completed another successful mission. "Ryan, you and your team have done excellent work. But the real war is just beginning. Admiral Clark is preparing to reveal our involvement to the Kethvar directly. Are we ready for open warfare?" Ryan asked. Admiral Sullivan's voice carried grim certainty. "Captain, we've been ready for 20 years. The Kethvar are about to discover that genocide has consequences they never imagined." Admiral Tony Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's most powerful warship, as Black Fleet emerged from hyperspace above the Kethvar's primary military shipyard at Keth Prime. The massive dreadnought was accompanied by 12 heavy cruisers and 30 escort vessels, all equipped with weapons that violated several galactic treaties. Today, humanity will reveal its true military capabilities to the species that had casually murdered 50,000 innocents. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Janet Phillips, "we're receiving multiple transmission attempts from a Kethvar fleet. They seem confused about our sudden appearance." Clark looked at the tactical display, showing over 40 Kethvar warships, scrambling to respond to the human fleet's arrival. The alien vessels were powerful, but they had been built according to traditional military doctrines. Human ships incorporated technology that the Kethvar didn't even know existed. "Open a channel to the Kethvar fleet," Clark ordered. "It's time they learned who's been destroying their facilities." The main screen activated, showing a Kethvar commander whose expression shifted from confusion to shock as he realized he was looking at a human officer. The alien's 4 eyes widened as the implications became clear. "I am Admiral Tony Clark of the Terran Defense Force," Clark announced in a calm, measured voice. "We are here to discuss your recent actions against human colonies. Specifically, your unprovoked genocide against the peaceful settlement of New Haven." The Kethvar commander's shock quickly turned to arrogance. In their experience, humans were a weak species with inferior technology. This had to be some kind of desperate bluff. "Human, you dare approach Keth Prime with your primitive vessels? We destroyed your pathetic colony as we have destroyed 43 other inferior species. You should flee while you still can." Clark's expression didn't change. "Your response has been noted. You may begin your attack when ready." What happened next shattered the Kethvar's understanding of human capabilities. The UES Retribution's main weapon systems activated, sending beams of coherent energy that punched through Kethvar's shields like they were made of paper. 3 alien heavy cruisers simply vaporized under the concentrated fire. The human fleet moved with precision that the rigid Kethvar military doctrine couldn't match. Captain Steve Johnson led the escort vessels in hit-and-run attacks that confused the alien formation. Commander Lisa Carter's cruisers used advanced targeting systems to disable Kethvar weapons while avoiding their return fire. The battle was less like warfare and more like a demonstration of technological superiority. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Paul Davis, "the Kethvar are attempting to form a defensive line around their shipyard. Should we engage directly?" "Negative," Clark replied. "Colonel Parker, begin ground operations. Let's show them what human infantry can do." Colonel Steve Parker commanded the most advanced military force humanity had ever fielded. His soldiers wore powered armor that enhanced their strength and speed far beyond normal human limits. Their weapons were linked to neural interfaces that allowed them to react faster than any biological opponent could follow. The ground assault began with precision orbital bombardment of military targets only. Unlike the Kethvar's indiscriminate destruction of New Haven, human forces carefully avoided civilian areas and non-military structures. This wasn't about revenge. It was about demonstrating the difference between humans and the species that committed casual genocide. Parker's troops landed at 12 strategic points around the shipyard's defensive perimeter. The Kethvar ground forces were numerous and well-equipped, but they had never faced an enemy that could adapt tactics in real time during battle. Human squad leaders made independent decisions based on changing battlefield conditions, while the alien commanders followed rigid procedures that became predictable. "This is incredible," reported Sergeant Mike Wright as his squad captured a Kethvar command bunker. "Their whole military system depends on centralized control. When we eliminate their officers, the lower ranks don't know what to do." The space battle above continued with devastating effectiveness. Admiral Clark's fleet systematically destroyed Kethvar ships while taking minimal damage in return. The aliens' weapons couldn't penetrate human shield technology, while human energy beams sliced through alien armor like it was made of thin metal. "Admiral," called out Navigator Kelly Thompson, "we're receiving a transmission from the Kethvar High Command. They're requesting negotiations." Clark looked at the tactical display, showing the burning remains of the alien fleet. Half their ships were destroyed, and the rest were severely damaged. The shipyard defensive stations had been reduced to debris. Kethvar ground forces were surrendering by the hundreds as human troops advanced with unstoppable efficiency. "Put them through," Clark ordered. The Kethvar leader on the screen looked nothing like the arrogant commander from earlier. This alien was clearly terrified, his voice shaking as he spoke. "Human Admiral, we wish to discuss terms. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding about the incident at your colony." Clark's voice remained calm and professional. "There was no misunderstanding. Your forces systematically murdered 50,000 human civilians after ignoring all attempts at peaceful communication. We are here to discuss consequences. We can pay reparations," the Kethvar leader offered desperately. "Resources, technology, territorial concessions. Name your price for ending this attack." Admiral Clark looked around his bridge at the human officers who had spent years preparing for this moment. These were professionals who understood that some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. "You don't understand," Clark replied to the alien leader. "This isn't about territory or resources. This is about what happens when you commit genocide against a species that values every individual life. You viewed mass murder as a practical solution to territorial disputes. We view it as an unforgivable crime." The bombardment of the shipyard resumed with methodical efficiency. Human forces targeted every military facility, every weapon storage area, and every ship under construction. The Kethvar watched helplessly as their primary military production center was systematically destroyed. Dr. Helen Martinez, working with military intelligence aboard the command ship, had spent weeks analyzing captured Kethvar databases. Her discoveries painted an even more horrifying picture of humanity's enemies than anyone had imagined. "Admiral," she reported, "I've finished analyzing their military records. The Kethvar have detailed files on every species they've exterminated. They keep them as trophies. They were planning to expand into human space systematically, targeting our agricultural colonies first because they viewed them as soft targets. The psychological profiles were particularly disturbing. The Kethvar military viewed genocide not as a necessary evil, but as an efficient solution to territorial expansion. They had calculated that eliminating existing populations was cheaper than negotiating or relocating. Human colonies had been marked for systematic extermination over the next decade. "Sir," reported Captain Janet Phillips, who had taken command of one of the cruiser squadrons, "we're detecting Kethvar reinforcement fleets approaching from 3 different systems. They're committing significant resources to defend this facility." Clark studied the tactical displays, showing enemy ships converging on their position. The Kethvar were finally taking the human threat seriously, But they still didn't understand what they were facing. Their military doctrines were based on fighting other species that followed predictable patterns. Humans had developed completely different approaches to warfare. All ships, prepare for Phase 2 operations, Clark ordered. Let's show them what happens when they bring their main fleet to fight us. The battle that followed became known throughout the galaxy as the Keth Prime Engagement. Human forces faced the largest Kethvar fleet ever assembled, over 200 warships defending their most important military facility. The aliens expected their overwhelming numbers to compensate for their technological disadvantage. They were wrong. Human ships use advanced maneuvering systems to avoid most enemy fire while concentrating their attacks on key targets. Admiral Clark's tactical doctrine focused on eliminating Kethvar command ships first, disrupting their rigid command structure and leaving subordinate vessels without clear orders. Major Paul Davis led precision strikes against the shipyard's administrative centers, capturing detailed records of Kethvar military operations throughout their empire. The information revealed the locations of other military facilities and the planned timeline for attacks against human colonies. By the end of the engagement, the Kethvar had lost 80% of their fleet, and their primary shipyard was completely destroyed. Human forces had suffered minimal casualties and no ship losses. The demonstration of human military superiority was complete and undeniable. As the surviving Kethvar ships fled in disorder, Admiral Clark sent a final message to their high command. This facility was destroyed because it supported the genocide you committed against New Haven. Every military target in your empire will face the same fate until you surrender unconditionally. You started this war by murdering innocents. We will finish it. Admiral Kelly Thompson stood aboard the UES Retribution, now under her command after Admiral Clark's death in the final assault on the Kethvar homeworld. Through the main view screen, she could see the last Kethvar stronghold, a massive fortress built into the planet's largest mountain. The structure had withstood 6 months of siege, but its defenders were finally ready to surrender. The war had lasted 8 months and reshaped the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Humanity had systematically destroyed every major Kethvar military installation, captured their leadership, and occupied their key systems. The species that had casually committed genocide for over a century now faced the very real possibility of extinction. Admiral, reported Communications Officer Nick Campbell, we're receiving a final surrender offer from the Kethvar leadership. They're requesting terms for their complete capitulation. Kelly looked at the tactical displays showing human forces surrounding the last enemy position. The fortress contained the remaining Kethvar High Command and approximately 10,000 military personnel. It was all that remained of an empire that had once controlled dozens of star systems. Put them through, Kelly ordered. The Kethvar leader who appeared on screen was clearly broken. The proud, arrogant species that had viewed other forms of life as obstacles to be removed now faced their own potential extinction. The alien's voice shook as he spoke. Admiral Thompson, we formally surrender all military forces and territorial claims to human authority. We accept complete responsibility for our actions against your species and submit to whatever judgment you impose. Kelly had spent months preparing for this moment. The decision she made would determine not only the fate of the Kethvar, but humanity's role in galactic affairs for generations to come. She could order the complete extermination of the species that had murdered New Haven's 50,000 innocent civilians. It would be simple justice. Instead, she chose a different path. The Kethvar Dominion will be dissolved, Kelly announced. All your military forces will be disbanded and your weapons surrendered. Your species will be placed under permanent human supervision to ensure you never again commit genocide against any intelligent life. You will cooperate fully with human authorities in establishing a new government dedicated to peaceful coexistence. The alien leader's relief was visible, but Kelly wasn't finished. However, she continued, understand that this mercy comes with absolute conditions. Any future aggression by your species against humans or any other intelligent life will result in your complete extinction. You have seen what human military forces are capable of. Do not test our patience again. The surrender was formalized over the next week. Kethvar military commanders handed over their weapons to human officers. Advanced alien technology was secured by human technical teams. The survivors of a once mighty empire were relocated to supervised settlements where they could rebuild their civilization under human oversight. Ambassador Michelle Taylor arrived at the former Kethvar capital to address the Galactic Trade Federation. The galaxy's other species had watched humanity's systematic destruction of a major military power with growing alarm and respect. Many were demanding explanations for human actions that seemed to violate established galactic law. The Kethvar Dominion committed unprovoked genocide against 50,000 human civilians, Michelle explained to the assembled alien representatives. They ignored all attempts at peaceful communication and surrendered. They treated mass murder as routine policy. Humanity responded proportionally to eliminate a threat to all intelligent life. The Federation's response revealed the complex new reality that humanity had created. Some species praised human actions as necessary justice against a rogue empire. Others worried that humanity's demonstration of overwhelming military force made them the galaxy's new dominant power. President Danny Brooks, who had initially hoped for diplomatic solutions, found himself dealing with a completely transformed galactic situation. Intelligence reports showed that 12 species have been planning attacks against human colonies, viewing Earth's apparent weakness as an opportunity. Those plans have been quietly abandoned after the Kethvar's defeat. Mr. President, reported Intelligence Director Maria Santos, we're receiving cooperation offers from 47 different species. They want to establish formal diplomatic relations and trade agreements. Several are requesting human military protection against aggressive neighbors. Dr. Amy Wright had spent months studying the psychological impact of humanity's victory throughout the galaxy. Her analysis revealed fundamental changes in how other species viewed humans and warfare itself. The galaxy operated under an assumption that military might determine who survived, she explained during a cabinet meeting. Species like the Kethvar used genocide as policy because they thought superior firepower made them untouchable. We've proven that someone always has bigger guns. Commander Nick Campbell led the establishment of the Colonial Protection Service, a new human military organization dedicated to preventing future genocides. The CPS operated under a simple doctrine. Any species that committed systematic murder against intelligent life would face complete military destruction by human forces. The service's first major operation came 6 months later, when the Zilak Confederacy attempted to exterminate a peaceful species of traders in a mineral-rich system. Human forces arrived within days of the attack, systematically destroyed the Zilak military, and placed their empire under the same supervised reconstruction that had been imposed on the Kethvar. We're not trying to rule the galaxy, Campbell explained to worried Federation representatives. We're establishing consequences for genocide. Species that can coexist peacefully have nothing to fear from humanity. Species that murder innocents will be stopped. The memorial service for New Haven was held 1 year after the colony's destruction. Governor Morrison's son, Peter, who had been studying on Earth during the attack, read his father's final message to a gathering of millions. The ceremony was broadcast throughout human space and to dozens of alien species who had requested to participate. They thought genocide would make them strong. Peter read from the memorial inscription. They discovered it made us unforgiving. Captain Ryan Foster, now promoted to admiral, commanded the human patrol fleet that monitored the former Kethvar territory. The surviving aliens lived in peace under human supervision, their children learning about the consequences of their parents' actions while building a new society based on cooperation rather than conquest. It's strange, Foster reflected during a conversation with Admiral Thompson. They're actually better off now than they were under their old government. They don't spend half their resources on military expansion anymore. Their standard of living has improved significantly. The broader galactic community adapted to new reality with surprising speed. Species that lived in fear of aggressive neighbors began to thrive under protection of human military power. Trade flourished as peaceful civilizations no longer needed to divert resources to military defense. But the most profound change was philosophical. The casual acceptance of genocide as a tool of expansion had ended throughout the galaxy. Every species now understood that humanity would respond to systematic murder with overwhelming force and absolute determination. Admiral Thompson received a final report from the Colonial Protection Service's Intelligence Division 3 years after the Kethvar's defeat. The document summarized humanity's impact on galactic civilization in stark, simple terms. Since the establishment of human military hegemony, no incidents of systematic genocide have been reported anywhere in known space. 12 major military conflicts have been prevented through diplomatic intervention backed by credible threat of human military response. Overall violence throughout the galaxy has decreased by 78%. The galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries, but that peace rested on a foundation of demonstrated human willingness to utterly destroy anyone who crossed certain moral lines. Other species had learned that humanity's response to genocide wasn't negotiation or compromise. It was annihilation. Standing on the observation deck of her flagship, Admiral Thompson looked out at the stars and reflected on the path that had brought them to this point. 50,000 innocent people had died at New Haven, their only crime being human. The species responsible had learned too late that some actions carried consequences beyond imagination. The Kethvar survivors often asked human administrators why they had been spared when their government had shown no mercy to New Haven civilians. The answer was always the same. Humans valued life, even the lives of their enemies. But that same value made them absolutely ruthless toward anyone who threatened innocent people. In the end, the galaxy had learned a simple lesson that would echo through history. Humanity could be the most peaceful species in known space, cooperating with anyone willing to coexist peacefully. But they could also be the most dangerous species in the galaxy when someone crossed the line into genocide. The memorial to New Haven bore a simple message that every species in the galaxy now understood. They thought genocide would make them strong. They discovered it made us unforgiving. It served as both remembrance of the innocent dead and warning to anyone who might consider following the Kethvar's path. The galaxy was safer because humanity had proven that genocide carried consequences beyond imagination. And 50,000 innocent souls have been avenged by the creation of a new galactic order where such atrocities could never happen again.